MLS information. Today is August 13th, 2022.
Plus MLS, the Greater Albuquerque Association of Realtors. The time since Clear Cooperation launched in January 2020 has sure been interesting, hasn't it? Realtors and MLS execs alike have discussed it so often that some of you probably use Clear Cooperation talks in place of counting sheep at night. But yet, despite all these discussions, there's still quite a bit of confusion around Clear Cooperation. I sat down and thought about this problem, and I believe what we're missing is the why, which led me to creating this presentation, Clear Cooperation, More Than Just a Rule to Follow. My intention is to leave you with a deep understanding of exactly what Clear Cooperation is. To get to that end, we will go through the past, covering the beginnings and foundations of the MLS and why it is so important. We will then cover the history and thought process behind Clear Cooperation and how it fits in with that foundation. Finally, we will end with talking about the rule itself, how it works, how brokers can work within it, and even some of the problems with the policy that we are facing. Before we get into Clear Cooperation, I want to ask you one foundational question. What is the MLS? If your answer was a marketing platform or somewhere to buy and sell homes, then you have a very shallow understanding of the MLS. It is so much more than that. Marketing is certainly the most visible side of the MLS to both the broker and the consumer, but like an iceberg, the full truth lies below the surface. MLS data is used at every level of government to make broad decisions that affect people's lives. The President of the United States gets a real estate report on his desk every month that uses data aggregated from MLSs across the country. It is also used by historians, researchers, and economists to study past housing trends in relation to things like storms, pandemics, recessions, wars, consumer confidence, and more. Let me give you an example of the impact of MLS data. October 10th, 2018, Hurricane Michael made landfall in the panhandle of Florida as one of the strongest hurricanes to hit the mainland U.S. in history. Roughly 75% of the homes in Panama City, Florida sustained damage. More than 30% were total losses. Every apartment building and Section 8 housing option in the county was damaged beyond livability. Overnight, we developed an immediate housing crisis, and prices on homes and rent understandably went through the roof. Bay County, Florida also has two military bases, Tyndall Air Force Base and the Naval Support Activity Navy Base. Suddenly, the housing stipend for all soldiers and military support staff residing in the area was not nearly high enough to keep up with the demand and these increases in costs. Each military base reached out to us at the MLS and asked for proof of these increased prices. We were able to provide data that was undeniable proof that prices had increased, which allowed those bases to convince the necessary committees in Congress that our soldiers needed their stipend increase. This is just one example of how MLS data is used. At 15 to 20% of total gross domestic product, real estate is one of the primary drivers of the economy and is a relatively accurate predictor of where the economy is going. Because of this, MLS data is used in a wide array of professions at every level of government, corporations, universities, and research institutions. Realtors are an integral part of this larger ecosystem, and the MLS is their data tool that makes this ecosystem work. The more accurate and complete our data is, the better we can accomplish all these other goals. Next, let's go into a bit of the history of the MLS and the three pillars of the foundation: cooperation, competition, and compensation. The concept of the multiple listing service actually predates NAR, which was founded in 1908. In the late 1800s, real estate brokers regularly gathered at the offices of their local associations to share information about properties they were trying to sell. They agreed to compensate other brokers who helped sell those properties, and the first MLS was born, based on the fundamental principle that's unique to organized real estate. Help me sell my inventory, and I'll help sell yours. To this day, the MLS only truly exists in the United States and Canada. Seeing the benefits of the MLS driving the most robust real estate industry in the world, some areas of Europe are attempting to build their own, but they are in the very early stages. The MLS facilitates cooperation among competitors by offering compensation. These are the three pillars of the MLS. Without the MLS, these are the kind of issues that real estate professionals around the world deal with. You have to visit multiple brokerages to get full picture of the inventory. Larger brokerages exert more control over the market because if you only want to visit 3 places to make an opinion, you just visit the 3 largest ones. Because there's no cooperative compensation, buyers generally don't get professional representation at all. Every deal is double-sided, and the buyer never truly knows that the agent is representing their best interest. Seeing the success of data aggregators in the US, like Zillow or Realtor.com, consumers demanded them in Europe, and those sites have popped up. But because there isn't one true source of data, these sites are able to exert more control of the market and take a larger chunk of the commissions. Because there's no MLS to monitor compliance and data integrity, outdated and inaccurate information is rampant on these data aggregators. Brokers will pay to put listings up on the data aggregator, but then never take them down long after the sale in order to continue generating leads. All of these issues are solved by the 3 pillars of the MLS: cooperation, competition, and compensation. Let's go over each one in a little more detail. By sharing all listings, all companies can compete because they have access to the listings. This means that brokerages compete against each other based on service and value rather than inventory. Even if you have no listings, anyone can sell a listing by bringing a buyer. Cooperation also means that buyers get more access. It's easy for everyone to see every home that's available in the market, and this transparency provides equal opportunity in the marketplace. Even if a broker fails to provide their buyer with all the available listings that meet their criteria, the buyer can still find it themselves. MLS cooperation is also why aggregate sites exist that allow buyers to look for homes. We led the charge, and they don't survive without us. This creates efficiency in the marketplace for consumers and brokers alike. As mentioned before, without the cooperation of the MLS, brokers must pay for and submit their listings directly to the aggregator websites. A key factor of cooperation that is often missed is that by being members of an MLS and submitting their listings, brokers are agreeing to abide by the rules and data compliance of that MLS that keeps data integrity at a high level, something that is lost when listings are submitted to aggregators. Before we talk about competition, let's take a moment and look at Economics 101, supply and demand. Consider this graph. On the y-axis, we have price, and on the x-axis, we have quantity. What you're looking at here is buyer demand. If you're buying a donut and there is a high price, you're not going to buy very many of them, so you buy a low quantity. Conversely, if the price is very low, you might buy multiple of them, so low price means higher quantity. Now let's add the seller's point of view. If you're a donut maker and the price you can sell them for is low, you aren't going to make very many of them. But if you can command a high price, you're going to be willing to make more of them. This intersection point of the supply and demand is called the equilibrium price. This is the point where both sides are happy and they agree on a fair price. If no other market forces exist and this market is allowed to operate freely, the law of supply and demand will always come to an equilibrium price that is fair for both the buyer and the seller. Of course, this is a very simplistic view, and there are other factors to consider, such as consumer desire for a product, is the product a commodity or a luxury, regulatory pressures, etc. But you can take an economics course if you want to get into all of that. This concept can be applied in many ways and is the foundation of competition in the free market. For example, consider if this chart was salary offered versus the number of employees who would be interested in a job. Employees would be supply. The higher the salary is for the job, the more employees are willing to fill that job. The employer would be demand. The higher the salary is for the job, the less people they want to hire for that position. Or, to be more specific to real estate, let's look at how the prices of homes affects the number of homes and buyers in the market. Supply in this case is how many sellers are willing to list. The more they're able to ask for their home, the more people are willing to list. Demand is how many buyers are willing to buy at that price. At a high price, there's only a few buyers available. But at a low price, there are a ton of buyers available. In the end, if the free market determines the price, it sells at an equilibrium price that is set by the market. So what we've learned here is that exposing a listing to the full force of the free market allows the market to set the price. If two parties work together and negotiate a price without exposure to the market, then an arbitrary price is set for that property based solely on the opinions and negotiating tactics of those two individuals. In fact, according to the NAR 2020 profile of home buyers and sellers, the median sale price of a for sale by owner listing where the owner did not know the buyer was $255,000, compared to a median sale price of $295,000 for homes that were agent assisted and exposed to the free market. That is $40,000 of value the for sale by owner seller is leaving on the table. Competition also provides more choices for realtors. In a non-MLS industry, brokerages compete almost solely on listing inventory. He who has the most inventory wins. However, by taking inventory out of the equation, brokerages must compete on training, services, and cost, giving licensees a much broader range of choices. Finally, competition in the free market drives innovation. If two brokerages offer similar costs in training, then their provided services is what differentiates them. And they will work harder to provide better services and innovate new ideas. The competition created by the MLS has been the primary driver behind all the wild changes we've seen in the industry over the last 2 decades. The final pillar